In Louisiana, 1 in every 9 homeowners owes more on their mortgage than their home is actually worth. That is the highest rate of any state in the entire country. And when a Louisiana homeowner stops making payments, the average foreclosure process takes 3,140 days to complete. 8.5 years, legally frozen, unable to sell, unable to refinance, unable to move on. From the jazz bars of the French Quarter to the oil platforms of the Gulf Coast, Louisiana has always been built on resilience. A culture unlike anywhere else in America, a state that survived Katrina and rebuilt from the water up. But here's what they are not telling you. Today we count down the 10 Louisiana cities where homeowners are the most trapped, buried under mortgages worth more than the houses they are paying for. And number 1 may be the city that surprises you most. Subscribe now so you never miss the next housing warning. Drive west from Baton Rouge on Interstate 10, and Lafayette appears in about an hour. The landscape opens up flat Louisiana prairie oil, derricks dotting the horizon, and in the distance, a modest skyline rising above bayou country. Lafayette calls itself the heart of Cajun country. The food is real, the music is loud, and the people will tell you there is nowhere else quite like it on earth. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Zillow's 2026 forecast, Lafayette is projected to be among the 6 Louisiana cities leading the entire nation in home price declines this year. Not 6 cities in a struggling Rust Belt. Not 6 cities in a flood zone. 6 cities in a single state. And Lafayette made the list. The reason comes down to a number that nobody in local government wants to say out loud. According to the Data Center, a New Orleans-based research organization, Louisiana, has added just 2% more jobs since the year 2000. The rest of America grew by 20% in that same period. Lafayette runs on oil money and Cajun pride. When the oil economy stalls, the pride does not pay the mortgage. A growing number of Lafayette buyers in this market report the same experience they purchased in 2021 or 2022 when rates were low and the market felt stable. Now, with insurance bills climbing and equity shrinking, the math on their mortgage no longer works the way the agent's spreadsheet said it would. If you bought in Lafayette at the 2022 peak around $270,000, your home is worth roughly $25,000 less today before a realtor takes their cut. And according to Zillow's forecast, the market has not finished adjusting. If your home is worth less today than when you signed that mortgage and insurance just went up again, what exactly are you still paying for? Shreveport sits in the far northwest corner of Louisiana, an hour from Texas, an hour from Arkansas, and somewhere between the two in terms of economic momentum. The Red River winds through downtown, past quiet streets, lined with Victorian houses and old casino boats that once promised a boom that never came. It is the kind of city that feels like it used to be bigger, like something important happened here and never quite came back. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. Shreveport's housing market is stagnant in a state that is stagnant. According to Atlas Van Line's 2025 migration pattern study, Louisiana is the most outbound state in the entire country. 66% of moves go out, 34% come in. That is the second consecutive year at the top of that list. And Shreveport is not fighting that current. It is riding it down. The oil and gas jobs that built this city never fully recovered after the price crashes of the 2010s. Manufacturing drained west toward Texas. Young workers followed the paycheck. According to the Data Center, Louisiana created just 2% more jobs since the year 2000, while the national average was 20%. Shreveport did not even keep up with Louisiana. A growing number of Shreveport homeowners report that they cannot sell without losing money. The buyer pool has thinned out, and those who remain are negotiating hard. Properties sit for weeks, then months. Sellers drop the price, then drop it again. The city is quiet in a way that does not feel like calm. If you bought a median-priced home in Shreveport in 2022 at around $165,000, you are looking at a market that has barely moved and in some neighborhoods gone sideways. Transaction costs alone would consume most of whatever thin equity the years have produced. You were told real estate always goes up. But in a state where job growth has flatlined for 25 years, what exactly is pushing your home's value higher? There is no city like New Orleans anywhere in America. The smell of beignets from Café du Monde drifting across Jackson Square on a Sunday morning. Brass bands bleeding through the walls of the French Quarter on a Tuesday night. The Garden District houses with their pastel paint and iron balconies built before the Civil War and somehow still standing. People come to New Orleans and fall in love within an afternoon. Some of them stay. Some of them buy. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Zillow's 2026 forecast, New Orleans is projected to see home values fall 7.2% this year, placing it among the 6 Louisiana cities leading the entire nation in home price declines. The city that survived Hurricane Katrina, that rebuilt itself from floodwater and grief, is now projected to lose value faster than almost any other market in the country. It comes back to one relentless force. According to CNBC's May 2026, reporting the average Louisiana homeowner pays $5,136 per year for homeowners insurance, compared to a national average of $2,868. That is 79% above the national average before you add flood coverage. And for a city sitting below sea level on a changing climate, flood coverage is not optional, it is survival. More than 52,000 Louisiana residents have already dropped their flood insurance policies, unable to absorb the new premiums under FEMA's updated rate model. That is verified FEMA data. Some of those homes are in New Orleans, uninsured, still mortgaged, still sitting on a floodplain. Zillow and Houseo report different figures for the New Orleans median price estimates, range from $329,000 to $373,000. If values fall 7.2% from that range, you are looking at a paper loss of $24,000 to $27,000 before agent fees, before closing costs. You bought in the city that never dies. But what happens to your equity when the city stops growing? Head south of Baton Rouge on Highway 30 and you enter Ascension Parish, a place that does not feel like a housing crisis zone at all. New subdivisions curve through former cane fields, soccer fields full on Saturday mornings, a Costco and a Target, and a Chick-fil-A on every major intersection. The kind of suburb people move to when they want something quieter than the city they left. Safer, more predictable, American. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. 14.5% of homeowners in Ascension Parish owe more than their home is actually worth. That comes directly from Adam's first quarter 2026 housing risk report, a data source that tracks underwater mortgages across the country. More than one in every 7 families in a suburb that marketed itself as the stable alternative to New Orleans is underwater on their mortgage right now. The pandemic migration drove prices up faster than local wages could follow. People poured out of New Orleans and Baton Rouge in 2020 and 2021. They paid peak prices on cheap money. Adam's 2026 Housing Impact Report flags that precise combination overpriced purchases against stagnant local income as the defining risk factor in markets like this one. A growing number of Ascension Parish buyers in this market report that they moved to the suburbs specifically to escape the volatility they feared in the city. Now their equity is negative. The city they left is struggling. The suburb they chose is no longer the safe harbor it was supposed to be. If you bought in Ascension Parish at the 2022 peak around $290,000, you are living next door to neighbors who are underwater. That compression does not stop at their property line. When distressed owners need to sell, they become your comps. Their financial pain becomes your home's market value. You moved here to escape New Orleans. But if 1 in 7 of your neighbors is underwater, did you really escape or just delay it? Alexandria sits in the dead center of Louisiana. Pine forests flank every road coming in. The Red River bends through a modest downtown of old warehouses and a skyline that punches above its weight for a city of 80,000. This is central Louisiana. No coastline, no celebrity, no jazz festival. just steady industry, a military base, and the kind of town where people have stayed because their families stayed. Until recently. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. Rapides Parish, home to Alexandria, has a seriously underwater mortgage rate of roughly 13%, placing it among the 50 worst counties in the entire United States. That finding comes from ATTOM's first quarter 2026 Housing Risk Report, 13%, in a town that nobody would describe as overbuilt or overspeculated. This is not Phoenix during a boom. This is a quiet city in central Louisiana, quietly drowning. Alexandria's economy runs on two pillars: Fort Johnson, the Army base, formerly known as Fort Polk, and the petrochemical and forestry industries that ring the city. Both have been contracting. When the base trims its civilian workforce and the oil economy retrenches, there is no replacement sector waiting in the wings. The local job market has no floor and no ladder. A growing number of Alexandria homeowners, particularly those connected to the base economy, find themselves in the equity trap. Transferred out of state by the military, but unable to sell the house without bringing money to closing. Paying rent somewhere else while still carrying a Louisiana mortgage on a home they cannot unload at any price that covers what they owe. If you bought a median-priced home in Alexandria in 2022 at around $185,000, the 13% underwater rate around you is not someone else's problem. It is your comparable sales. It is your appraisal. It is your exit price when you need one. When the military base shrinks and the oil jobs do not come back, what is the floor on home values in a city that depends on both? If this is hitting close to home, hit subscribe. We cover these markets every week so you can stay ahead of what is coming. Take Interstate 12 east out of Baton Rouge for 40 minutes, and you reach Hammond, the biggest city in Tangipahoa Parish. It sits at the edge of Lake Pontchartrain country, surrounded by strawberry farms and pine stands, a college town with a downtown that still has its bones. People discovered it during the pandemic as an affordable escape hatch from New Orleans, close enough to commute, far enough to breathe. The listing photos always showed the square footage. They never showed the numbers behind it. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. 15% of homeowners in Tangipahoa Parish owe more than their home is worth right now. That places Tangipahoa among the top 5 worst counties in the United States for seriously underwater mortgages, according to ATTOM's first quarter 2026 Housing Risk Report. 1 in every 6 or 7 families in this so-called affordable escape hatch is trapped. The math of the bedroom community has inverted. People moved here to avoid the cost of New Orleans. But the home prices they paid in 2020 and 2021, inflated by pandemic migration demand, are now anchored above where the market actually sits. And the city they commute into is itself on Zillow's list of projected price declines. The anchor and the destination are both dragging. A growing number of Tangipahoa buyers in this market report being caught between two bad options. A house they cannot sell without losing money, and a city they commute to that is losing value of its own. They escaped New Orleans to somewhere quieter. What they found was the same problem with a longer drive. If you bought in Tangipahoa Parish at the 2022 peak, around $215,000 and 15% of your neighbors are seriously underwater, your comparable sales are being written by people in financial distress. Their emergency becomes your market price. You bought here to commute to a better life. But if the city you commute to is in decline, and your home is worth less than you owe, what exactly is the destination? Baton Rouge is the kind of city that gives you confidence. The state capitol building towers over the Mississippi River, the tallest in the country. Louisiana State University fills the south part of the city with students' game day traffic and an economy that feels permanent. Government jobs, university jobs, medical center jobs. The infrastructure of a city that is not going anywhere. Which is exactly why the next number lands so hard. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. Baton Rouge has the highest rate of seriously underwater mortgages of all 92 major metro areas that ATTOM tracks nationwide. Not one of the worst. The worst. 11.9% of homeowners in this city owe at least 25% more than what their home could sell for today. The capital city of the most underwater state in America is also the most underwater state capital in the country. The insurance numbers explain a large part of it. According to CNBC's May 2026 report, Louisiana homeowners pay an average of $5,136 per year for homeowners insurance against a national average of $2,868. In Baton Rouge, where flooding is not a hypothetical, that premium is not a line item. It is a second mortgage payment that builds zero equity. According to KTBS, news homeowners across Baton Rouge describe the same trap they cannot sell, without bringing cash to closing, to cover the gap between what they owe and what the market will pay. They cannot refinance because they are underwater. They are locked in by a combination of peak-era pricing, stagnant appreciation, and insurance costs that keep rising regardless. If you bought a median-priced home in Baton Rouge in 2022 at around $245,000, Zillow's current estimate for the area sits at roughly $215,000. That is $30,000 gone on paper before you pay the agent, before you cover closing costs, before you write the check to get out from under what you owe. So if you bought here thinking government jobs meant stability, what does the data say that stability is actually worth? Drive southwest from New Orleans for 90 minutes and the land starts to dissolve. The road narrows. The tree canopy gives way to marsh grass and open water. You are entering Terrebonne Parish Huma's home, a place where the Louisiana coast is not a line on a map, but a slow, ongoing negotiation with the Gulf of Mexico. The offshore oil platforms that funded this community are visible on a clear day. So are the water lines left by the last storm. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Zillow's 2026 forecast, Huma is projected to see home values fall 9.4%. This year, the steepest projected decline of any Louisiana city in the forecast. 9.4. In a community where the housing stock was already depressed, that number is not a correction. It is an accelerant. Huma runs on offshore oil and gas. When the energy sector contracts, the city contracts with it. The shift toward renewable energy and the volatility of offshore drilling employment has taken workers away from Terrebonne Parish faster than any housing policy could absorb. According to CNBC's reporting on climate insurance risk, major insurers are actively reducing Louisiana coverage or exiting the market entirely, which pushes remaining premiums higher for everyone left behind. A growing number of Huma workers in the oil sector bought homes in 2020 or 2021 when crude prices rebounded and the future looked like it used to. Now the future looks different. The offshore work is less steady, the insurance bill is higher, and the Zillow estimate on the house is trending the wrong direction. If you bought here in 2021 at around $205,000, a 9.4% decline brings that home's projected value to roughly $186,000. That is a paper loss of $19,000 in a community where most buyers stretch to get into the market in the first place. The oil and gas industry promised this town a future. The foreclosure numbers suggest the future arrived early, and it looked nothing like the promise. Lake Charles sits in the southwestern corner of Louisiana, close enough to the Texas border that people sometimes forget which state's economy it depends on. It has a small skyline, a casino strip along the Calcasieu River, and a petrochemical industry that stretches along the I-10 corridor like a lit-up assembly line at night. Drive through the residential neighborhoods, and you will still see the blue tarps, not from last month, from Hurricane Laura in 2020, and Hurricane Delta that followed 6 weeks later. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. 17.1% of Lake Charles homeowners owe more than their home is worth right now. That makes Calcasieu Parish the second most seriously underwater county in the entire United States, according to Atom's first quarter 2026 housing risk report. And according to Zillow's 2026 forecast values, here are projected to fall an additional 7.3 to 8.9% before the year is out. The trap was set at the intersection of disaster and debt. Many Lake Charles homeowners used insurance payouts after Laura and Delta to rebuild, but borrowed against what they thought the rebuilding would be worth. The market disagreed. They rebuilt homes that appraised below the loans taken to rebuild them. According to Adam's foreclosure data, Louisiana foreclosure filings have risen sharply, and Lake Charles parishes rank among those with elevated activity. A growing number of Lake Charles homeowners describe the experience that The Street reported on in 2026 as the equity trap, unable to sell without a loss, unable to refinance because of the underwater position, unable to rent at a rate that covers the mortgage and the insurance together. The only way out involves a financial hit. The question is how large. If you bought here in 2022 at around $195,000, a further 8 to 9% decline leaves you at roughly $178,000, while potentially still owing close to the original purchase price. 2 hurricanes, 1 mortgage crisis, 1 insurance exodus. Lake Charles survived all of it, but can it survive all 3 at once? Pull into Monroe from the south on Highway 165, and the first thing you notice is activity. Construction equipment on flatbeds, new hotels going up, traffic that did not used to be there. Monroe, Louisiana, a city of 45,000 in the rural northeast corner of the state, is in the middle of something unusual. Meta is building a $10 billion artificial intelligence data center in Richland Parish, just miles from the city. Jobs are coming. New residents are moving in. Home prices, according to Redfin's data, are up 7.3% year over year. Monroe looks on the surface like a city that found its moment. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. Monroe, Ouachita Parish has the highest seriously underwater mortgage rate of any county that Atom tracks in the entire United States. 17.4%, nearly 1 in every 6 homeowners here owes at least 25% more than what their property could sell for today. That is the finding of Atom's first quarter 2026 housing risk report. The single most underwater housing market in America is not a collapsed Sunbelt suburb. It is a Louisiana city that just got a $10 billion vote of confidence from one of the richest companies in the world. Here is why that matters more than the good news. The Meta data center creates demand for new construction and new residence people coming in at today's prices, which are rising. But the people who bought in 2021 and 2022 bought above what the market could support without that catalyst. They did not buy into a Meta economy. They bought into a pre-Meta Monroe. And the gap between what they paid and what they owed has not been closed by the announcement. It has been papered over. According to the Ouachita Valley Federal Credit Union's 2025 market analysis, Monroe home prices have climbed. But the buyers from the peak years are not the ones benefiting from that climb. New money is entering the market. The old debt is still there. If you bought in Monroe in 2021 at around $185,000, the rising market is a cruel irony. Your neighbors bought in last year at $249,000. They have equity. You have a number on a bank statement that has not moved the way the headlines said it would. A $10 billion data center is being built next door. New jobs are coming. New residents are moving in. And yet, 1 in almost 6 homeowners here still owes more than what their house can sell for. So, what does that tell you about how deep the hole really is? 10 cities, 1 state, and the same trap underneath every single one of them. The people who bought in Lafayette did not think they were making a dangerous bet. Neither did the families who moved to Ascension Parish to escape the city or the workers who signed a mortgage in Lake Charles 2 months before a hurricane rewrote the landscape, or the homeowners in Monroe who bought before anyone had heard of a Meta data center. They were told what everyone in America gets told, that real estate is safe, that prices only go up, that buying is always better than renting. Louisiana's data is what happens when that story meets reality without a soft landing. 14 of the 50 most seriously underwater counties in the United States are in Louisiana, not 14 of the bottom 100, 14 of the bottom 50. The most underwater state capital in America sits here. The single most underwater county that Atom tracks in the entire country sits here. And the state has been losing more people than it gains for 5 consecutive years, not because of one bad event, but because of an accumulation of broken math that the market has not finished correcting. the most underwater state in America, is not a warning about Louisiana. It is a warning about what happens when the gap between what you owe and what something is worth becomes too wide to close. The warning signs were always there. The question is, were you watching? This video is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial or real estate advice. Always consult a licensed professional before making any investment decisions. Subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and drop your city in the comments below.